Welcome back to another episode of the Force for Growth podcast. I'm Ricardo, and today I will be talking to you about holiday stress. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, holiday stress. With the holidays right around the corner, we know we all tend to feel a little stressed about certain situations that may come up during the holiday season. Now, let me just say this: everyone has different things. We all have different situations that stress us out, that maybe put us in what we call a crash state, and that we sometimes may get stuck, don't know how to cope. We go into fight, flight, or freeze, all these other situations. But here's the thing: we all cope with stress in a different way. Nobody copes with stress the same way. Just like our belief system that we talked about before, it comes down to the meaning that we give to the situation. Let me tell you guys, the last couple of weeks have been a bit stressful for me. So we're getting ready for our seventh annual Baskets for Good. So this is our annual project, outreach community project, where we feed families in need all throughout North Texas. And we started this as a grassroots mission, a grassroots project. We all just got together and decided that we wanted to be a force for good. So we got together with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Dallas and started to help their families for Thanksgiving with a Thanksgiving meal. Since then, that has evolved to where we provide all of the families about a week's worth of groceries, including items for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So our event is actually starting today as of this recording, November 18th. It's day one where we go pick up the truck from the grocery store, 18 wheeler. We go deliver. We start setting everything up for tomorrow when we assemble all the bags and the groceries. So next week, I'll give you guys a debrief, by the way, just so you guys know. But you can visit basketsforgood.org for more information on that. Either way, last week, mind you, this week is when we're starting. Last week, our grocery supplier, canceled the entire order. All of this was due to the supply chains issues that several grocery stores have been facing, and they canceled our order. Needless to say, it was not a good feeling. It increased the stress a little bit, especially for me. Oh, that gut, it hit me right here in the gut. And that's where my stress hits me at. It hits me in the gut because it's like, oh man, what are we going to do? Again, think about that meaning. What are we going to do? And that was my first thought. That was my first statement. It wasn't an empowering statement. It wasn't going to get me where I need to go. It wasn't going to get me into action. And it definitely wasn't going to break me out of this stressful state that I was falling into. So I really needed to just take a breath and pull it together and just relax into it. And then once I got to that state, I was able to get into action. I started picking up the phone. I started calling and texting people. I started to go to Walmart, to the other grocery stores, to talk to different people to see what they could do, to see what the situation was. Our board got on board. Our our board got on board, and I don't know why that's so funny to me. Maybe it's because I'm recording at 6 in the morning. But our board got on board, and they also started to reach out to different people to see what we could pull together. Finally, I reached out to my friend John, who is connected with the Kroger grocery store here in North Texas, and he immediately started to see what they could do. Finally, they were able to commit that they were going to be able to fulfill all or most of the order. And they're actually still working on it. As of last night, they were working on it, still putting it together. But the good news is that we have the majority of the order. There might be a couple of little things here and there. They're still working on it, but the majority will be there for pickup this morning at 9 a.m. Whew, that was a tough one. A tough one, especially coming down to the last days before we're supposed to get the mission started. So, on top of all of this, over here at the Leon household, we also have to prep for our family Thanksgiving, which will be on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. And the big thing that I want to stress here, haha, nice pun there, that I want to stress is that I could totally give all of these situations a very stressful narrative. If I wanted to, I could totally wig out. I could totally freeze, right? And just be like, "Ugh," and allow myself to get stuck and not take action. Jesse and I could totally stress ourselves out right now if we chose to, because as well as we plan the next 3 days out, guess what? The plan doesn't always go to plan. So we have to be flexible. We have to think on our feet. We have to continue to move forward and adjust on the fly. And that could also cause a little stress. But overall, I think the last couple of weeks have just been at a level 3. The highest that I felt stressed was a 5. And that's what I felt inside. But that doesn't mean that that's necessarily what I was projecting out. After having a conversation with Jessie, she thought that I was really stressing over the situation. But the reality was that I was in a focus mode. I was in a who can I reach out to? Who are my resources that I can get help from or that could give me a lead to get our order fulfilled? It wasn't that I was feeling stressed out or that I was wigging out. I was just really, truly focused on who I could reach out to, what resources could I tap into, who can help me fulfill this order, who can I call, who may have a lead, things like that. And when I get into that mode of just that thinking and exploring all of my resources, I really get quiet. And maybe I might walk around with my head a little bit down, but that doesn't mean that I'm wigging out, that I'm sad, that I'm this. So I'm sharing this with you because I want you to see this in other people, that everyone deals with stress differently. Everyone copes with stress differently. Everyone gets into an action state differently. And that's just how I do it. And I didn't realize that I was coming across as stressful or having some kind of sad crash state. I didn't know that until Jessie told me, and she told me, and I was like, no, you know what? I get it. I understand. But I was just really in that focused, who can I reach out to? What can I do? I have to do something. I can't just sit here and wait phase. I started to relax when our friend John and Kroger said they were going to help. And then I started to relax a little bit more whenever they sent me pictures of our pallets and pallets of food in their storage room. Now, did the stress go away? No. I did not allow myself to relax all the way down to no stress because I know there's always something to happen and I need to stay focused on the mission and what we need to do and what really needs to happen with the entire situation. But again, it was still low. Let me just share one thing, and this is my belief. You can believe what you like. Different people will tell you different things, but my goal is not to totally eliminate stress and never, ever, ever feel stress in my life. Why? Because to me, that's unreasonable. Now, what I can do is handle the stress better so I have high highs and low lows. Obviously, a stressful situation would fall under the category of a low low. And that's okay to feel stress. I'm not going to beat myself up when I feel stress because that's not going to help the situation. But I also know that stress is going to happen. It's a part of life. Can we control it? Can we deal with it? Can we experience stress for a really short amount of time, maybe a few minutes before we get into action? Yes, 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 and yes. But to totally say, I refuse to ever feel any sort of stress ever, That seems like very unreasonable and for me a recipe to fail. So just acknowledge that stress is going to happen, that it's okay, that it's human nature, that it's a part of life, and that we can deal with it, that we don't have to necessarily get stuck in these stress states, right? And to me, that's the goal. Finally, just don't let that stress control you. You control that stress. You control the meaning that you give to it. You can handle it. Once you control that level of stress, it's you can deal with it. For me, when I started to see the pallets come in, when John said that they started putting the order in, I felt a sigh of relief. That helped with my stress. So look for those signs. Don't get stuck in like, oh, it's not going to happen. Because I could also continue to give that a narrative like, oh, no, the whole order is not going to happen. You know what? We'll figure it out. Ultimately, today's still going to be a great day. And tomorrow we're going to assemble. We're going to help families in need on Saturday. And we're going to figure it out. And that's the kind of narrative that I would suggest you take on. But again, depending on the case, stress may come from fear, worry, sadness, and so on. I went through those phases within the last week actually. And so now I just want to give you guys some tips on how to handle stress. So my first tip here is the obvious is relax. Well, some of you might say, "Well, Ricardo, I know why are you telling me to relax?" You didn't even relax. You were just telling us how stressed you were with the whole situation and things and this. You know what? You're right. But I also allowed myself, while I knew that this was a stressful situation, I knew that the food order was canceled. And I did go into this focused state of getting resourceful, which is not relaxed, but I also knew that I wasn't going to be able to do anything from a stressed state. I knew that I would just sit there and just be worried about the situation and not do anything. And that doesn't help. So while I may not have relaxed all the way to zero and wiped out the stress, I relaxed enough to get myself unstuck and take action. And the good thing here is that I have Jessie here to help me to give me a reality check when I need it. And she says, we're going to figure it out. We're going to do it and it's going to happen. We'll do it one way or the other. And I know that deep down inside, I know that, but I still want to make sure that we do it in the most efficient way. Come down to it, we would go to 15 grocery stores if we needed to and buy all the groceries ourselves. That's what we used to do before. But that's not necessarily the most efficient way. And I wasn't just going to fold and allow that to be the solution. But you have to relax in order to start moving. And what can you do to relax? For me, I meditate, do some meditation, take a nap here and there, exercise, and really just kind of take a break from the situation. I'm lucky that I was able to take a break for a little bit. Not a day or two or three, because we have to really get all this stuff moving. But I was able to just take a break for 20, 30 minutes, an hour, or whatever the case may be, and just kind of break away from the entire situation and just do a mental reset. We all need to do a mental reset every once in a while, and that's okay. So the second thing is, after you relax, after you get your mental reset, then it's time to get focused. What matters? So, going back to my example, getting the food and finishing the mission and helping the families in need is what matters. I cannot allow myself to make it bigger than what it is. That's the mission. That's what matters. That's what's important. And that's the priority. So, I know why we do what we do. I have my mission. The mission is to be a force for good. So I know why this matters. And I know that if I get stuck and I allow myself to get bogged down in the situation, which is in my outer world, I'll add, it has nothing to do with me inside. I'm reacting to what happened with my original supplier, I still have to fulfill the mission because it matters. So I have to get myself out of this stuck state because I can't help myself and I can't help anybody else if I'm stuck. I can't help myself. I can't allow anybody else if I'm in a free state from the stress that is coming at me from my outer world. I have to be focused on what matters and getting into action. That's the second thing. You got to take action. Who can you reach out to? Who are your friends that can help you? Remember, they want to help. John was ecstatic that I reached out to him. He was ready to go. He knew he could help, and he's so happy that he was able to play a part in our mission. Also, one thing that I had to remember was what's one small thing that I can do right now to move forward? What is one thing you can do right now to move forward? I could pick up the phone. I could make some phone calls. I could get some leads. I could call someone that may know something. The whole point is when you move forward, you get unstuck. And you have to get unstuck. You can't do anything from a stuck state. You have to get unstuck. To me, after I started moving forward, I started to feel better because I know in my head and in my heart that, like, hey, you know what? I'm working on stuff. One of these things is going to hit, and I believe deeply that I was going to get what we needed for our event. But I couldn't just sit here and believe. I had to make some phone calls. I had to reach out to people because if they don't know what the situation is, they're not going to be able to help. So you have to move forward. You have to take action. You have to do some small little things in order to just feel like you're doing something to get unstuck. And then finally, just get unstuck and move forward a little bit. You will feel better if you're in a very stressful, stuck situation. So here's a bonus tip. And I used to fall into this trap repeatedly over. I can't even explain how much I used to fall into this trap. And it's coping. I used to love to escape my problems. Not necessarily drugs, but alcohol, etc. I was the master of escaping my problems. But guess what? The problem was always still there. The escape and the drink and the so on didn't help. Didn't help. If anything, it was just a band-aid to make me feel better in that exact moment in time. But as soon as I got back to the real world, guess what? The problems didn't go away, and I wasn't a bit more resourceful to be able to find a solution to handle the problem. It just doesn't help. It just didn't help. If anything, it put me in a worse situation. So, if that's who you are and you're coping by drinking or doing drugs, or if you feel stress on a consistent basis, get help. Find you a good therapist. Like I said before, everyone stress is different and we all cope in different ways. So find someone to talk to. Yes, I love the fact that you're listening to my podcast. I love the fact that you're tuning in. And if you're listening to this podcast, I'm making an assumption that you're into personal growth. However, as much, oh man, now I'm getting a little flustered here. But as much great information as there, as much reset, whew, as much information as there's out there, great information, powerful information, life changing information. If you're still repeating those same patterns, get some help. Get some help. This podcast, any other podcast, books, or whatever are not a replacement. We can give you some great strategies. We can give you some great tools. We can give you some great ideas in order to move forward, get unstuck, handle life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, if you're still experiencing these feelings, go talk to someone. Find a therapist, a really great coach, someone that can help you work through these situations on a one-on-one basis. That's my final little asterisk right there. But I'm wishing you well on your holiday stress. I'll be back next week to give you guys a debrief and tell you guys about how Baskets for Good went, because there's always a learning lesson in this event. Every year that we do it, I learn something about myself. I learn something about my community. I learn something about organizing events. There's just so many lessons, and I'll share those with you next week. So thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a review wherever you're listening to on this podcast. Leave a review and share. Share this episode. Remember to visit forceforgrowth.com for details on all of the platforms that we're on. And if you want to learn more about Baskets for Good, you can visit basketsforgood.org. Also, we'll be taking a break in December. So the end of November will be our last episode for season 1, and we'll be back with season 2 in 2022. So remember to be a force for good, a force for growth, and a force for greatness. Bye.